I've never been one to scare easily. Maybe it was the invincibility of youth, that fog that wraps around us, convincing us we're untouchable. But that summer night 2 years back, I came face to face with true fear. I was 18, fresh out of high school, and the proud new owner of a used Toyota that hummed with the promise of open roads. I lived in a small town where myths and secrets were the common inheritance, passed down like family silver. The clock had just struck midnight when I left a friend's house in the next town over. The moon was shrouded by clouds, as if the heavens themselves were cautioning me against the drive ahead. The road home was infamous for its stories, the kind we'd use to scare each other, deep down never really believing them. 15 minutes in, the road began to twist like a serpent through the hills. Streetlights stood at intervals, their yellow glow barely cutting through the dark. My body begged for sleep, my eyes heavier than usual. Then I saw him. A man stood by a car, its hazard lights beating slowly like a weary heart. He was still, a lone figure in a landscape of isolation. Common sense would have screamed to drive on, but there was something in his stance that screamed for help. "Do you need help?" I called out, my voice oddly echoing in the empty night. He turned slowly, as if every movement was a monumental effort. "My car's broken down. Can you give me a lift to the nearest town?" Something in his voice made me hesitate. It wasn't the tone, but the lack of desperation. Too calm, too controlled. "I can't give you a ride," I said, "but I can call someone to help." He moved closer and I saw his face for the first time. It was an ordinary face, but his eyes. They were voids I'd never witnessed. Dark wells sucking in any surrounding light. My heart raced, something primal within me screamed to flee. "Please," he whispered, "now plea, it's just a short trip." I knew I should leave. Every sense was alert, screaming danger. But then, as if sensing my wavering, he smiled. That smile. It didn't belong on his face. It didn't reach his eyes, a smile hiding secrets I didn't want to know. "Sorry," I managed, reaching to start the car. That's when he lunged. It wasn't human, too quick, too desperate. He grasped the window with a strength that seemed otherworldly. I floored the accelerator, the engine's roar shattering the night silence. He was dragged a few feet before letting go, and I didn't look back. Behind me was only the dark road and the pounding of my heart in my ears. I didn't stop until I hit the lights of my town, shaking and cold with sweat. The police found no one when they arrived at the scene, just the empty road and the chorus of crickets. I never found out what he wanted, but sometimes, in the sleepless nights that followed, I wonder about that man on the road, about what might have happened had I opened that door. Ever since, I carry the certainty that in the darkness, there are things we don't wish to encounter, things Stephen King could pen with a truth that only fiction can hold. And me. I was just a side character who nearly stepped into the lead role of one such tale. That year, winter had stretched out its cold fingers across West Tennessee, where I lived. It was my final year of high school, counting down the days within those brick walls like a prisoner awaiting release. Our town was a place that dozed under the snow, so rare that even a light dusting could turn streets into skating rinks and adults into children. The morning before it all happened, clouds hung low, heavy and gray like omens. Snow had fallen overnight, a thin veil, but the school board decided the roads were passable. So, with chattering teeth and resentful glances, we trudged to school. After class, I sought refuge at my friend John's house. The walls throbbed with the sound of our video games, a welcome escape from the chill that awaited us outside. As twilight drew long, dark shadows across the curtains, the reality of the icy road home began to weigh in my stomach like a stone. Only when darkness had settled did I dare venture home. The road was a living thing, thrumming with hidden dangers under the weak light of the street lamps. I tried to focus on the path ahead, but my mind wandered, restless, as if aware of a script I had yet to read. I had just left John's neighborhood when it happened. A blind hill, always a point of tension, now seemed like a slumbering beast waiting. And that's when I woke it. A car emerged from nowhere over the hill, like a beast roused by my carelessness. They braked, the horn blared long and angry, and for a moment, I saw the reflection of their hate-twisted faces in my rearview mirror. The apology I gestured with my hand was futile, lost in the roar of their engines as they glued themselves behind me. My anxiety mounted as their high beams filled my mirrors, an unceasing lighthouse of wrath. Realizing they were following me, a thought occurred: perhaps they were like the specters from Stephen King's stories, haunting the living with a sinister purpose. I knew I shouldn't lead them to my home, so I began taking random turns, each one an additional chapter in the unfolding story. But they were always there, a persistent shadow behind me. Fear made me press the accelerator, logic discarded like an unwanted passenger. I should have headed to the police station, but that realization came too late, a belated revelation that coincided with my car finding black ice. The skid was a deadly dance, a grotesque ballet where I had no partner. The car spun and slid off the road, coming to rest in a ditch like a wounded animal. There I was, ensnared in frozen solitude, until I heard the car doors behind me open. They approached me, dark figures against the snow's glow, and I realized that, like in King's tales, the true terror wasn't supernatural, it was all too human. They yanked me from the car with a ferocity that could only be described as hunger and need to inflict hurt. They beat me until their own breaths became ragged, until satisfaction filled them, and they left, leaving me as an echo of pain in the vastness of winter. I lay there, a character in a very real horror story, vowing to myself that if I survived, I would pen this tale. I would make each word weigh as much as the blows I took, so that perhaps someone reading could understand that monsters are everywhere, and not all of them live solely within the pages of a book. For 5 years, I had been navigating the concrete labyrinth of the big city as a cab driver. It was 2010, and the whispers of Uber were still in the future. The city was mine, with its asphalt veins and electric pulse. Autumn had settled in, bringing a blanket of darkness that settled over the city like a fog. Nights grew cold, bones chilling beneath the skin, and the rain fell like sheets of silver, thick and relentless. I remember that particular night, one where the loneliness was so thick you could slice it with a knife. I was tired, my eyes waging a war against the heaviness, as the hypnotic sound of the windshield wipers kept a steady rhythm. Yet, it was Saturday night, and the allure of money spoke louder. After dropping off a couple of guys in a part of town even the cops think twice before entering, I grabbed a coffee at a stop and moved on. The city swallowed me up again, its buildings stretching like shadows against the dark sky. That's when I saw him, a lone figure by the roadside, a tall man whose face was hidden beneath the brim of a hat soaked by the unforgiving rain. He signaled, and I stopped. He got into the cab, a river running off his coat, and murmured a vague destination. East Side. Something in his tone made me pause, but compassion won out. East Side it is, I said, but a seed of anxiety began to take root. He reclined, an enigmatic passenger with slow movements and a sinister scar on his jaw that suggested stories I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. The silence between us was a third passenger, heavy and awkward. Reaching the east side, the city showed its weary face, buildings bearing the marks of years without care. I pulled over and asked if this was good. He turned slowly, and our eyes met in the mirror. Then, like a character from a King novel, he revealed a gun, a flash of metal in the rainy night. "Hand it over," he demanded, his voice a low growl. My heart drummed a rhythm of panic. I handed over my wallet, and he rifled through it with eager, lifeless fingers. "The keys," he ordered next. Reluctantly, I tossed them, and he caught them with a skill that made me think this wasn't his first night like this. "Get out," he said, pointing the gun towards the door. I complied, stepping out into the rain, feeling its chill like the touch of ghosts. He drove away with my cab, leaving me in a dark alley where I might as well have been just another shadow. Tears mixed with the rain, and my dignity drained away with the water spiraling down the drain. That was when I realized the city had teeth, and I had been bitten. After what seemed like an eternity, I rose. I stumbled down streets I didn't recognize, each step an effort, until I found a diner, an oasis of light in the storm. The bell over the door rang like a distant alarm as I entered. The waitress, with a look that had seen too much, handed me the phone. I called the police, my voice a shaky whisper, telling them about the night I had lived, a night straight out of a King story, where the monster was real and walked in the rain, where the terror didn't come from ghosts or demons, but from the man in the sodden hat. Dig those spooky tales. Then drop a comment with the stories you're itching to hear next, click to peep 2 more bone-chilling tales, and hey, keep that bedroom door cracked open. Catch you later.